He lay in the hospital bed, unmoving, eyes hiding secrets no one could guess. Was his fiancée truly in love with him, or just his fortune? Little did he know, the quiet nanny was about to show the truth in the most unexpected way. If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as beautiful as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The morning sun spilled across the skyline of New York City, glinting off the glass towers of Hawthorne Enterprises. Inside the penthouse suite, Alexander Hawthorne, the 42-year-old billionaire CEO, sat in his sleek leather chair, his expression a mix of fatigue and calculation. His empire spanned tech, real estate, and luxury fashion, yet his personal life was a mess. Publicly engaged to the elegant but shallow Victoria Langford, a socialite whose smile seemed rehearsed for every camera flash. Alexander's mind, however, wasn't on the engagement party later that evening. It was on a secret plan only he knew. Meanwhile, in the vast estate that mirrored the empire he controlled, the quiet presence of Jasmine Carter moved through the house. The 28-year-old nanny had been caring for Alexander's younger cousin, little Ellie, for 3 years. Jasmine had seen Alexander behind the boardroom mask, a man capable of charm, ruthlessness, and hidden vulnerability. Unlike Victoria, Jasmine's affection was earned through genuine moments. A spilled glass of milk, a scraped knee, a whispered secret. The mansion was alive with contrasts. Victoria fluttered around, ordering staff, arranging decorations, and checking her reflection in gilded mirrors. She laughed too loud, drank champagne too early, and smiled too often, never pausing long enough to truly see anyone. Alexander, watching from a distance, noted every calculated gesture. His plan wasn't cruel, it was necessary. He had to know if Victoria loved him for him, or for the fortune he represented. Even Ellie, innocent and perceptive, sensed the tension. She tugged at Jasmine's sleeve. "Why does she act like that, Jasmine?" she asked, pointing to Victoria. Jasmine only smiled softly. "Some people hide what they feel behind masks, Ellie. But real love, you'll know it when you see it." As the clock ticked toward the evening gala, every character prepared to step onto a stage they didn't fully understand. Alexander's plan to feign paralysis was a gamble. Victoria's charm was a carefully rehearsed act, and Jasmine's quiet loyalty would soon become the unseen force that would shake everything. The gala in Hawthorne Enterprises' grand ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and champagne flutes. Victoria floated through the crowd, laughing at every compliment, her eyes flicking toward Alexander. But he wasn't there. In a private corner of the mansion, Alexander slipped into the hospital-style wheelchair he had arranged in advance. The plan was simple: a small fall on the stairs, a convincing injury, and he would feign paralysis to test Victoria's true feelings. His heart pounded, not with fear, but anticipation. When Victoria finally entered the room, dressed in sparkling silver, her smile faltered at the sight. "Alexander, oh my God, what happened?" she cried, rushing to his side. Alexander remained still, eyes cold but calculating. He let the panic rise in her voice, measuring her reaction. Jasmine, nearby, knelt beside little Ellie, who watched silently. "Everything will be fine," she whispered, though she sensed the tension in the air. Victoria's hands shook as she tried to touch Alexander, her concern mingling with fear and a hint of irritation at the inconvenience of his injury. As the night unfolded, whispers of the accident spread through the staff and guests. Alexander's secret test had begun, and every interaction, every glance, was a step closer to revealing Heart's true intentions. The morning after the gala, the mansion was tense. Alexander remained in his wheelchair, carefully limiting movement to make his paralysis convincing. Victoria hovered nearby, fussing over every detail, making breakfast, adjusting pillows, fretting over minor discomforts. But her eyes often flicked toward the cashmere-lined furniture or the stacks of documents she assumed Alexander should be reviewing. Alexander watched silently, noting every expression. Her worry seemed genuine in tone, but occasionally laced with impatience or subtle frustration. "I'll handle everything, Alexander. Don't even think about lifting a finger," she said, voice tight, half concern, half annoyance. Jasmine moved quietly through the house, her presence calm but observant. She noticed Victoria's quick glances toward valuables, the way she seemed slightly relieved at Alexander's dependence. Meanwhile, little Ellie tugged at Jasmine's sleeve. "Jasmine, is she really worried about him?" she asked innocently. Jasmine knelt, brushing Ellie's curls aside. "We'll see soon, sweetie. Love shows in ways that don't need words." Across the mansion, tension rippled like an invisible storm. Alexander's secret plan had thrown the household into uncertainty. Friends, staff, and family felt the change. Some offered sympathy, some suspicion. Every glance, every word now carried double meaning, creating a charged environment where truth and deception danced dangerously close. Victoria paced the sunlit living room, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floors, the sound echoing like a metronome marking her growing impatience. Every step was punctuated by a sigh, every glance at Alexander's still form laden with a mix of worry and irritation. She fussed over his meals, adjusted pillows, and hovered like a storm cloud, but the shine of her practiced smile never quite reached her eyes. Responsibility weighed on her in a way she hadn't expected. The inconvenience of Alexander's condition, even if temporary, forced her to confront the fragility of someone else's needs, and for Victoria, it was almost unbearable. Alexander, stationary in his wheelchair, observed silently. Each moment of her frustration, each subtle rolling of the eyes, each rushed gesture was noted. He analyzed the micro-expressions, the tones, the hesitation in her words, trying to understand whether her devotion was genuine or performative. Was this the woman he loved, or just the woman comfortable with wealth and status? Jasmine moved quietly through the mansion, her presence calm but unwavering. She helped Alexander with small tasks, adjusting his blanket, handing him water, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. Every touch was gentle, careful, full of patience. She noticed Victoria's impatience and the occasional glimmer of self-interest, the way she sometimes prioritized her reflection in the mirror over Alexander's comfort. Little Ellie, ever perceptive, tugged at Jasmine's sleeve. "Jasmine, why does she look so angry when she helps him?" she asked innocently, her big brown eyes full of concern. Jasmine knelt beside her, smoothing her curls with a soft hand. "Some hearts are still learning what love really is, Ellie. And sometimes, people hide their feelings behind frustration because they don't know any other way." Victoria's attempts to resist the reality of Alexander's condition created tension in every corner of the mansion. She rationalized her irritation as stress, blaming fatigue, or the inconvenience of hosting Alexander's guests. But her behavior began to reveal cracks. Impatience toward the staff, dismissive gestures when she thought no one was watching, and sharp tones that hinted at hidden selfishness. Even the household staff noticed. The chef prepared meals with extra care, wondering if Victoria's hurried perfectionism was genuine concern or self-image. The chauffeur lingered at the door, sensing unspoken tension. Even Alexander's assistant tiptoed around the penthouse, unsure if Victoria's flares of anxiety were about him or the wealth he represented. Meanwhile, Alexander found himself quietly impressed by Jasmine's quiet confidence. She moved with ease, tending to needs without complaint, offering support without expectation. It was a stark contrast to Victoria's visible struggle. Every small act of kindness from Jasmine highlighted Victoria's impatience, and every missed opportunity for genuine care from Victoria deepened Alexander's uncertainty. The day stretched long, each hour layering doubt, observation, and unspoken emotion. Victoria's resistance to fully embracing Alexander's vulnerability made her love seem performative, and every gesture, once charming, now seemed tinged with self-interest. Alexander's gamble had begun to show cracks, and the invisible tension in the mansion thickened into a silent storm, threatening to expose hearts for what they truly were. The following week, Alexander arranged a recovery retreat in the mansion's guest wing, a plan disguised as therapy and rest, but in truth, it was engineered to keep Victoria close, isolated from distractions, and under constant observation. The spacious guest suite was warm, sunlight spilling through tall windows, yet the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken tension. Victoria, initially confident she could manage, quickly realized that Alexander's condition left her responsible for everything, from meals to mobility. She hovered, assisting him with the simplest tasks, her hands trembling slightly from nerves and frustration. "I can't believe you let this happen," she said, her voice a mixture of worry and exasperation. Alexander, maintaining his stillness, let the words wash over him, gauging her sincerity. Every syllable, every hesitation, every glance told him more than words ever could. Jasmine moved silently around the room, adjusting blankets, serving tea, and subtly guiding both Alexander and Victoria through daily routines. She noticed the strain in Victoria's posture, the forced cheerfulness, the occasional flicker of self-interest when she thought no one was watching. Yet Jasmine's presence offered calm, balance, and the quiet support Alexander couldn't articulate. Little Ellie followed Victoria wherever she went, clinging to her skirts yet observing silently. "She's helping because she wants to look good, right?" Ellie whispered to Jasmine one afternoon, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. Jasmine shook her head softly. "Sometimes helping comes from love, not appearances." "We'll see who's who soon, Ellie." Hours stretched into days, and the mansion's corridors became a stage for subtle tests. Victoria's every action was under the microscope, offering assistance with visible irritation, complimenting Alexander while secretly scanning the house for signs of luxury, even arranging small distractions to escape prolonged care. Meanwhile, Alexander found himself noticing things he hadn't before: the quiet steadiness in Jasmine's hands, the gentle concern in her voice, the small acts of kindness that cost her nothing but meant everything. Meals, therapy sessions, even reading hours became moments of scrutiny. Victoria's impatience grew, sometimes boiling into sharp words or hasty gestures. Alexander observed it all, internally tallying compassion versus convenience. The longer she stayed, the more her true colors were revealed. Moments of genuine care clouded by impatience, gestures of love intertwined with self-interest. In contrast, Jasmine moved effortlessly in forced proximity, offering her help without expectation, speaking softly to Alexander about trivial things, and allowing silence to carry meaning when words weren't enough. Her presence grounded the household, proving through small, unnoticed gestures that true devotion often came quietly, without announcement. By the end of the week, Alexander realized the retreat had achieved its purpose. Forced proximity hadn't just tested Victoria, it had illuminated hearts, motives, and intentions. Victoria's love appeared conditional, tied to convenience and comfort, while Jasmine's care, though quiet, radiated sincerity. Little Ellie noticed too, tugging at Alexander's blanket one morning. "Jasmine really loves you, doesn't she?" she asked. Alexander smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and revelation, understanding the truth that even wealth and charm could not mask. The mansion, usually alive with grandeur and spectacle, now felt intimate, tense, and revealing. Every room, every meal, every glance had become a subtle battlefield of intention versus emotion, setting the stage for heartbreak, revelation, and the quiet triumph of genuine love. The days in the mansion passed like a slow storm. Victoria's composure began to crack under the pressure of constant care. Every spilled cup, every misstep of the wheelchair, seemed to magnify her frustration. She tried to mask it with a practiced smile, but Alexander, observant and calculating, noticed the flickers of irritation in her eyes, the tense clenching of her jaw, and the way she sometimes forced a laugh when his attention shifted elsewhere. Jasmine moved through the household with quiet grace, effortlessly attending to Alexander and Ellie, calming nerves, and anticipating needs before they were spoken. Her presence, steady and unassuming, highlighted Victoria's impatience and superficiality. Alexander caught himself watching Jasmine more often, not just for her care of him, but for the genuine warmth she radiated, a stark contrast to Victoria's self-conscious devotion. Tension mounted during meals. Victoria fussed over the table settings, snapped at a waiter for a minor delay, and even argued softly with Ellie about manners. Alexander remained silent, studying the interplay of her emotions. "Are you upset with me, Victoria?" he asked one evening, voice calm but probing. She smiled nervously, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Of course not. I'm trying to help." But the hesitation in her tone betrayed her true feelings. Ellie noticed too. Sitting close to Jasmine, she whispered, Why does she look like she's annoyed when she helps you? Jasmine shook her head, a quiet smile on her lips. Some people are still learning what love means, sweetie. Actions speak louder than words, and soon you'll see the difference. A small incident triggered the next wave of tension. Victoria accidentally knocked over a vase while attempting to move Alexander, shattering it across the polished marble floor. She gasped, panic and embarrassment mingling, while Alexander's eyes remained still, watching every reaction. Victoria's face flushed, and her hands trembled as she tried to apologize profusely. Jasmine stepped in, calmly cleaning up while reassuring Alexander. The contrast was undeniable. One woman's care was laden with guilt and anxiety, the other's with quiet efficiency and warmth. Rumors began to stir among the household staff. Whispers of Victoria's impatience and subtle self-interest reached Alexander's assistant and even the chauffeur. Meanwhile, little Ellie observed silently, piecing together truths adults often tried to hide. Her innocent questions, why does she only help when she wants to, punctuated the growing tension, reminding Alexander of the stakes. By the end of the week, the mansion felt like a pressure cooker. Every glance, every gesture, every word was weighted with scrutiny. Alexander's experiment, meant to test Victoria, had begun to reveal deeper truths, the limits of her love, the selflessness of Jasmine, and the subtle emotional currents running beneath every interaction. Hearts were being tested, loyalties challenged, and the stage was set for confrontation, revelation, and the unexpected triumph of genuine devotion. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind that cast shadows across the grand Hawthorne mansion, softening the edges of its opulence. Alexander sat in the study, wrapped in a warm blanket, staring out the window at the drizzle streaking down the glass. Jasmine entered quietly, carrying a tray with tea and a small plate of cookies Ellie had baked. The soft clatter of porcelain and the faint aroma of chocolate filled the room, a sharp contrast to the storm outside. Alexander's eyes met hers, and for a long moment, silence hung between them. Then, quietly, he spoke. Do you ever wonder why people act the way they do, Jasmine? Why they hide behind masks? Jasmine sat down beside him, her hands resting lightly on the tray. Sometimes, Alexander, it's because of what they've been through, she said softly. For the first time, Alexander shared a fragment of his past. Born into a family of immense wealth, he had been taught to mask vulnerability, to view emotions as weaknesses. His parents' constant pressure had shaped a man who excelled in business but struggled in intimacy. Betrayal had marked his youth, friends who envied him, lovers who courted him for his name. Each memory, each betrayal, had carved a careful, calculating side into his personality. Jasmine listened, eyes warm and unwavering. She didn't interrupt, didn't judge. She only offered a steady presence, a reminder that someone could care without conditions. It makes sense, she said gently. Your walls were built to protect yourself, but sometimes the right people help you lower them, even if you don't know it yet. Alexander exhaled, a rare vulnerability slipping into his voice. He admitted that his decision to feign paralysis was as much a test of his fiancée as it was a test of his own trust. He needed to see who loved him genuinely, who valued him beyond fortune and status. Jasmine's quiet understanding, her patience, and her innate kindness left a mark. Little Ellie peeked into the study, curiosity bright in her eyes. He's scary when he's quiet like that, she whispered. Jasmine smiled, brushing Ellie's hair back. Sometimes people carry storms inside, but that doesn't mean they can't find warmth. And sometimes, the people who care quietly are the ones who change everything. The rain continued to fall outside, washing over the mansion like a soft cleansing. Inside, the walls Alexander had built for decades began to feel less imposing. The first seeds of trust, and perhaps even connection, were quietly planted, an invisible bond forming between him and Jasmine, one built not on wealth, appearances, or obligation, but on empathy, understanding, and the unspoken promise of genuine care. That evening, the mansion felt unusually still. Victoria had retired early, claiming exhaustion, leaving Alexander, Jasmine, and little Ellie in the softly lit living room. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the polished wooden floors. The storm outside had subsided, leaving a fresh, rain-soaked scent in the air, and the gentle hum of the city beyond the estate was faintly audible. Ellie curled up on the rug, her small hands holding a stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with curiosity. "Tell me a story, Jasmine," she pleaded, voice soft yet insistent. Jasmine smiled, settling on the couch beside Alexander, who remained propped against pillows in his wheelchair. "All right," she said, "but you have to promise to listen closely." As Jasmine wove a tale of courage, kindness, and unexpected friendship, Alexander found himself drawn in, watching her animated gestures, the way her voice shifted with emotion, and the subtle laughter that escaped her at the story's funny parts. Ellie's giggles filled the room, and Alexander realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't calculating, judging, or testing. He was simply present. "See, Alexander," Jasmine said, glancing at him with a gentle smile. "Even the smallest acts of kindness, even the quietest words, can change everything." He nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth without needing to speak. A moment later, Ellie tugged at Alexander's blanket. "You like her, don't you?" she whispered. Alexander's brow furrowed slightly, a mixture of surprise and amusement crossing his face. Jasmine only laughed softly, shaking her head. "Ellie, sometimes people realize things slowly, and that's okay." As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Alexander felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. The bond between him, Jasmine, and Ellie grew quietly but powerfully, built on trust, laughter, and genuine care. Victoria's absence made her superficial concern evident in contrast, highlighting the sincerity of Jasmine's presence. For the first time since the accident, or rather, the pretense, Alexander sensed hope. Love, he realized, wasn't in grand gestures, expensive gifts, or rehearsed smiles. It was in moments like this, shared laughter, small kindnesses, and the unspoken understanding that someone truly cared for him, regardless of wealth or status. The next morning brought a flurry of activity in the mansion. Alexander's feigned paralysis had already begun testing Victoria, but now, external pressures began to rise. The media caught wind of his accident, and reporters hovered outside the estate, eager for updates. Social media buzzed with speculation, casting Victoria under an unrelenting spotlight. Her every move was scrutinized, and the pressure only amplified her cracks. Inside the mansion, Victoria's frustration deepened. She snapped at the staff over trivial mistakes, fretted obsessively about Alexander's needs, and struggled to maintain her polished facade. Yet, Alexander observed silently, noting that her concern, though loud and visible, often came with subtle impatience or self-interest. Meanwhile, Jasmine faced her own challenges. Tasks grew more complex as Alexander relied on her guidance for his daily routine, and balancing Ellie's playful energy with Alexander's staged limitations tested her patience. Yet she managed it all gracefully, her calm presence a steady counterpoint to Victoria's escalating tension. A new complication arose when Alexander's assistant delivered urgent news. A critical business deal needed his immediate attention. Alexander feigned helplessness, delegating tasks under Jasmine's supervision while Victoria watched anxiously. Her reaction revealed more than words could: fear of responsibility, quick irritation at being sidelined, and brief, unguarded moments of true care. Little Ellie, ever observant, tugged at Jasmine's sleeve. "Jasmine, why is she worried and angry at the same time?" Jasmine knelt beside her, voice soft. "Because love isn't always simple, Ellie. Some people struggle to show it the right way." As the day wore on, tensions intertwined with subtle revelations. Alexander's secret test and the sudden pressures of real-world responsibilities exposed cracks in Victoria's composure and highlighted Jasmine's unwavering devotion. By evening, the mansion was thick with unspoken truths, jealousy, and suspicion, laying the groundwork for heartbreak, confrontation, and the eventual triumph of authentic love. That night, the mansion was quieter than usual. Victoria had retired to her suite, her mind racing with a mix of guilt, frustration, and confusion. Alexander's feigned paralysis had shaken her confidence, but it was Jasmine's calm presence that lingered in his thoughts. In the softly lit study, Alexander and Jasmine sat together, Ellie tucked beside them with her favorite blanket. Alexander finally spoke, his voice low and unguarded. "You know, Jasmine, I haven't always trusted people easily. Not just because of my family, but because of someone I loved deeply once. Jasmine leaned closer, attentive, as Alexander continued. He recounted a past relationship from his 20s, one that had begun with fiery passion but ended in betrayal. A woman he had trusted fully had manipulated his wealth and influence for her own gain, leaving him heartbroken and wary. That betrayal had shaped much of his adult life. The guarded demeanor, the careful scrutiny of everyone who entered his circle, and the reluctance to let anyone close without proof of loyalty. Jasmine listened without interruption, her eyes reflecting empathy rather than judgment. I understand, she said softly. Pain leaves marks, Alexander, but it doesn't define the heart. Sometimes, it just helps us recognize who deserves our trust. Little Ellie, sensing the weight of the moment, whispered, So that's why you wanted to see if Victoria really loved you? Alexander nodded slowly. Yes, and perhaps to see if anyone else might surprise me in ways I don't expect. For the first time, Alexander acknowledged not just his fears, but his hope, that someone could exist who cared for him purely, without interest or expectation. Jasmine's quiet support became more than duty, it was a revelation. Her presence was a living testament that love could be steady, sincere, and unselfish. The mansion, bathed in the soft glow of lamplight and the distant hum of the city, felt warmer than it had in years. Secrets were shared, vulnerabilities exposed, and an invisible bond deepened between Alexander and Jasmine, a bond built on understanding, trust, and the quiet promise that genuine love often comes from the most unexpected places. The following days brought a subtle shift in the mansion's energy. Alexander began to notice the small, almost imperceptible ways Jasmine cared for him. How she would brush a stray hair from his forehead, refill his water without being asked, or read aloud to him in the evenings. Her gestures were quiet, unobtrusive, and completely genuine, unlike Victoria's anxious, often performative attempts at care. Ellie, delighted by the calmer atmosphere, spent hours laughing and playing with Jasmine, weaving paper dolls and sharing whispered secrets. Alexander watched them together and felt a warmth that had long been absent from his life. You two make a great team, he said one afternoon, voice soft. Jasmine glanced up, smiling, and replied, It's easy when you care about someone. Victoria, meanwhile, grew restless. Her patience frayed with each moment she saw Alexander laughing or smiling under Jasmine's guidance. Subtle jealousy tinged her interactions. She tried to mask it with sweetness, but Alexander could sense her forced cheerfulness and fleeting irritation. Every compliment she offered was laced with calculation, a stark contrast to Jasmine's effortless kindness. A shared evening in the library became a pivotal moment. Alexander asked Jasmine to help him sort through old photo albums, memories of his youth and family. As they laughed over awkward hairstyles and forgotten fashion choices, Alexander felt a genuine connection forming. Her laughter, unpretentious and warm, contrasted sharply with Victoria's rehearsed smiles. For the first time, he experienced companionship that was neither transactional nor conditional. Ellie tugged at Alexander's hand, whispering, Jasmine really loves you, doesn't she? Alexander chuckled softly, realizing how true it was. It wasn't a love declared in grand gestures or flashy events, but a quiet devotion woven through countless small moments. By the end of the week, the household's dynamics had shifted. Victoria's charm had lost its shine under the scrutiny of forced proximity, while Jasmine's sincerity deepened Alexander's trust and affection. The mansion, once a stage of tension and superficiality, now became a sanctuary for honest emotions, laughter, and the first hints of something lasting. It happened on a Friday evening. The mansion was filled with golden light as the sun set, casting long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Alexander, still in his wheelchair, was reviewing a set of documents while Jasmine quietly tidied the room. Little Ellie sat on the rug, absorbed in coloring. Everything seemed calm, deceptively so. Victoria burst into the room, her face flushed with anger and panic. Alexander, I can't believe this. How could you keep something like this from me? She shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. Alexander, keeping perfectly still, raised a brow but said nothing, letting her words crash around him. Jasmine instinctively stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on Ellie's shoulder, trying to shield the child from the tension. Victoria's accusations spiraled, her frustration and jealousy bleeding into every word. She accused Alexander of favoritism toward Jasmine, claiming that he was ignoring her efforts, overlooking her dedication, and rewarding someone she saw as just a nanny. For Alexander, the moment was a revelation. Victoria's superficial devotion, her conditional care, had reached a breaking point. Her frustration wasn't about him. It was about being exposed, about control slipping from her grasp, and about jealousy she couldn't hide. Ellie, wide-eyed, whispered, "Jasmine, she's being mean." Jasmine knelt beside her, soft but firm. "Some people only show who they really are when things don't go their way, Ellie. Remember that." The mansion, once a stage for tests and subtle tension, erupted into emotional chaos. Victoria's betrayal of patience and grace shattered the delicate balance Alexander had been monitoring. Tears welled in her eyes, but there was no real remorse, only fear of losing what she thought she deserved. In that instant, the contrast between the women became undeniable. Jasmine's calm, consistent love and care stood in stark relief against Victoria's volatile, self-centered reactions. Alexander realized, with sudden clarity, that the truth he had been seeking had revealed itself through tension, through confrontation, and through the raw display of human flaws. The shatter point was complete. Hearts were exposed, loyalties tested, and the mansion, filled with the echoes of anger and disappointment, now held the undeniable truth of who loved genuinely and who had been performing all along. The aftermath of Victoria's outburst left the mansion heavy with tension. Alexander remained in his wheelchair, silent and composed, while Victoria retreated to her suite, slamming the door behind her. The echoes of her anger lingered, mingling with the faint scent of her perfume, a reminder of the superficial charm now stripped away. Jasmine moved quietly through the halls, calming little Ellie, who clung to her as if sensing the shift in the household. "It's okay, Ellie," Jasmine whispered, brushing back her curls. "Sometimes people show their true selves when things get hard. We'll be all right." Alexander finally broke the silence, his voice calm but edged with authority. "This was always a test, not just for her, but for me. And now, the truth is clear." He paused, watching Jasmine as she set down a tray of tea. "I see where true care lies." Victoria, isolated in her suite, wrestled with embarrassment, anger, and the creeping realization that her charm and wealth could not mask her flaws. She had tried to perform love, but Alexander's test exposed her motives. Her mind raced with strategies, excuses, and regrets, but deep down, she knew the chasm between her intentions and genuine affection was irreparable. Meanwhile, Jasmine's quiet consistency became a beacon of stability. She didn't boast, didn't demand attention, and yet her presence carried the weight of true devotion. Alexander noticed the subtle ways she anticipated his needs, offered comfort without expectation, and cared for Ellie as if she were her own. The mansion itself seemed to exhale, the air lighter now that tension had crystallized into clarity. Alexander and Jasmine shared moments of silent understanding, a bond strengthened by trials, observation, and revelation. Ellie, sensing the shift, smiled and whispered, "I knew it, Jasmine. You really love him." By the end of the day, the fallout had drawn clear lines. Victoria's true nature had been revealed, the pretense stripped away, and Alexander could finally focus on the people who mattered, the ones whose love was authentic, unwavering, and earned through actions rather than appearances. The following morning, Alexander felt a quiet determination settle over him. The mansion, still echoing from the previous night's confrontation, needed guidance and calm, a presence that could mend the lingering tension. Jasmine, as always, was there without hesitation, moving gracefully through the rooms, attending to small tasks that somehow felt monumental in their impact. Alexander decided to confide further in her, revealing subtle insecurities and fears he had never shared with anyone before. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever find someone who sees me, not just my wealth or my title," he admitted, his voice low and vulnerable. Jasmine listened, her eyes steady and empathetic, offering no judgment, only understanding. Her quiet guidance extended beyond words. She helped organize his recovery exercises, encouraged Ellie in her play, and offered thoughtful suggestions for handling the household staff and lingering tension from Victoria's behavior. Every action reinforced her sincerity, highlighting her ability to care without expectation or pretense. Even the mansion seemed to respond to her presence. Rooms once heavy with tension now felt lighter, more welcoming. Alexander noticed how Ellie laughed more freely, how the staff moved with less anxiety, and how even Victoria's absence left room for healing rather than conflict. A brief moment of play with Ellie brought a smile to Alexander's face. Jasmine's laughter joined theirs, soft and unforced. For the first time, he realized that the quiet hand of help, given freely and selflessly, could be more powerful than grand gestures or wealth. It was a force that built trust, forged bonds, and revealed the truest form of love. By evening, Alexander felt a newfound clarity. The storm of tension had begun to settle, replaced by trust, mutual respect, and the undeniable bond that was forming between him, Jasmine, and Ellie. The mansion, once a stage of uncertainty and manipulation, had begun to feel like a home, nurtured by acts of kindness, patience, and unwavering devotion. That night, Alexander sat alone in the quiet of his study, the city lights twinkling through the tall windows. The mansion, finally at peace, seemed almost to breathe with him. His feigned paralysis had served its purpose. He now saw clearly who loved him genuinely and who had been performing. Jasmine entered softly, carrying a tray of tea. She set it down, and for a moment, they simply sat together in comfortable silence. Alexander's mind wandered over the past week, the tension, the heartbreak, the revelations, and the quiet, unwavering care Jasmine had shown. Every act of kindness, every patient gesture, every moment she had put others' needs above her own now resonated with profound clarity. He thought of Victoria. Her charm and beauty had always been dazzling, yet it was layered with self-interest and impatience. Her love had been conditional, her concern performative. By contrast, Jasmine's devotion required no performance, no reward, just genuine care and presence. Ellie appeared at the doorway, sleepy-eyed and clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Good night, Mr. Alexander," she whispered. Jasmine smiled, gently tucking Ellie into bed. Alexander watched them, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. The quiet bond of trust, the gentle rhythm of shared laughter and care, had transformed the mansion into a place of comfort and hope. Alexander reflected on his own walls, built high from past betrayals and disappointments. For the first time, he realized that love didn't need to be tested through schemes or trials. It revealed itself through consistency, patience, and genuine concern. Jasmine had shown him the truth, that authentic love is quiet but unshakable, steady but transformative. As he finally allowed himself to relax, Alexander understood that his journey was only beginning. Trust had been rebuilt, hearts had been exposed, and a deeper, more meaningful connection had begun to take root. A bond that promised healing, loyalty, and, perhaps, the love he had always longed to find. The morning sun filtered through the mansion's tall windows, casting golden light across the polished floors. Alexander sat in his wheelchair near the hearth, feeling a rare sense of clarity. The events of the past weeks had peeled away illusions and exposed the hearts of everyone around him. Now, the decision he had been postponing loomed large. Victoria entered, her expression tentative, as if expecting forgiveness without earning it. "Alexander, I want to help," she said softly, voice trembling. But her words rang hollow. Her gestures lacked the sincerity that had marked Jasmine's every action. Alexander studied her carefully, noticing the flicker of entitlement in her eyes, the subtle impatience hidden behind her plea. Jasmine approached quietly, her presence steady and calming. She had never demanded anything from Alexander. Her care had always been selfless, her affection consistent. She knelt beside Ellie, who smiled up at her, then glanced toward Alexander. It was an unspoken moment, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had grown stronger than any wealth or charm could match. Alexander took a deep breath. The choice before him was simple, though heavy with consequence. He could continue down a path of wealth and social expectation with Victoria, or he could embrace the quiet, genuine love that Jasmine offered, a love built not on appearances or obligation, but on trust, understanding, and selfless care. Looking at Jasmine, he saw all the answers reflected in her gentle eyes. She had been the constant in a sea of pretense, the anchor when his world threatened to drift into doubt. Without a word, Alexander made his decision, letting his gaze linger on Jasmine with gratitude, respect, and an unspoken promise. Victoria, sensing the shift, faltered, her rehearsed charm and fragile confidence no longer enough to sway him. The choice had been made. Alexander's heart, long guarded and carefully calculated, now opened to a love that had quietly proven itself at every turn. The mansion, bathed in morning light, seemed to exhale, carrying with it the relief, clarity, and anticipation of a new chapter, one where hearts were aligned, and true devotion had finally found its place. The following week, the mansion buzzed with a lighter energy. Alexander's choice had shifted the atmosphere. Where tension had once reigned, there was now a sense of relief and anticipation. Victoria, quietly sidelined, avoided confrontation, leaving the household to settle into its new rhythm. Alexander spent more time with Jasmine and Ellie, discovering the simple joys he had long overlooked. Morning walks in the estate's gardens, shared breakfasts in the sunlit dining room, and quiet evenings by the fire became rituals of connection. Each moment reinforced the realization that love did not need to be extravagant. It simply needed to be real. Jasmine's presence brought out the softer side of Alexander. He laughed more easily, shared stories from his past, and even allowed himself small acts of vulnerability, gestures that had been impossible with Victoria's performance-driven affection. Ellie thrived as well, her laughter filling the mansion, her playful energy echoing the newfound harmony. One afternoon, as Alexander watched Jasmine helping Ellie build a tower of blocks, he felt a surge of hope and gratitude. The quiet, consistent care that Jasmine had offered throughout the test of his feigned paralysis had proven invaluable. Love, he realized, could heal old wounds, bridge emotional gaps, and transform even the most guarded heart. The mansion, once a place of tension, now hummed with warmth, trust, and the promise of a future built on genuine connection. Alexander knew that the path ahead would not be without challenges, but with Jasmine by his side, the hope rekindled within him shone brighter than any wealth, status, or pretense ever could. Just as the mansion began to feel like a true home, a sudden challenge threatened the fragile harmony. A prominent business rival, sensing opportunity in Alexander's recent accident, attempted to exploit the situation. A confidential deal had been leaked, and media outlets began speculating wildly about Alexander's health, casting doubts on his ability to manage his empire. Victoria, sensing a chance to regain influence, returned under the pretense of offering help. She insisted she could negotiate with the press, mediate with investors, and restore Alexander's reputation. But Alexander, now confident in his clarity and priorities, recognized her motives immediately. Her concern was still wrapped in self-interest, and her presence threatened the delicate balance of trust and peace he had built with Jasmine and Ellie. Jasmine, ever vigilant, suggested a plan to handle the external pressure while protecting the household's integrity. Her calm decisiveness and insight into human nature proved invaluable. Alexander realized that her guidance was not just emotional support. It was strategic, thoughtful, and born of genuine care rather than obligation. Tension peaked when Victoria attempted to confront Alexander in his study, demanding attention and validation. He remained seated, steady, and resolute. With Jasmine quietly supporting Ellie in the background, Alexander finally addressed Victoria firmly. This household, and my life, is no longer a stage for performance. I know where genuine care lies, and it isn't here with you. Victoria faltered, her power evaporating under the weight of truth. The mansion, once rife with manipulation and hidden motives, now stood as a fortress of authenticity. Alexander, Jasmine, and Ellie faced the external threat together, united by trust, understanding, and unwavering devotion. For the first time, Alexander felt invincible, not because of wealth, influence, or control, but because the people who truly mattered were by his side. The final obstacle had arrived, and with it, The opportunity to prove that love grounded in sincerity could withstand any challenge. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with quiet determination. Alexander, Jasmine, and Ellie had prepared for the day's challenges with a sense of unity and purpose. Alexander reviewed the leaked documents and media reports, but this time, he did so with calm confidence. He knew the truth would prevail, and more importantly, he was surrounded by people whose loyalty and care were undeniable. Jasmine moved seamlessly between tasks, coordinating with staff, organizing communications, and providing thoughtful advice that Alexander followed without hesitation. Her calm efficiency contrasted sharply with Victoria's previous attempts at control and manipulation. Every small action she took reinforced the authenticity of her devotion. The breakthrough came during a critical press conference. Alexander appeared in his wheelchair, projecting strength and composure. Questions came fast and pointed, but with Jasmine's guidance, he navigated each one gracefully, addressing rumors, clarifying his condition, and demonstrating leadership. The media, impressed by his poise and clarity, began reporting favorably, and the rivals' attempts to sow doubt crumbled under scrutiny. Behind the scenes, Ellie beamed, whispering to Jasmine, "See, she's not the one who really cares." Jasmine smiled, ruffling the little girl's hair. Alexander caught the moment, a swell of gratitude filling his chest. He realized that this day was more than a victory over external challenges. It was a testament to the power of genuine love, trust, and selfless support. As the sun set over the mansion, Alexander finally allowed himself to exhale fully. The breakthrough was complete. His heart, long guarded, had found its match, and the household that had once teetered on tension and pretense now radiated authenticity, love, and hope. The mansion basked in the golden glow of a late afternoon sun, a quiet serenity settling over every room. Alexander sat in his wheelchair by the fireplace, but this time, it was not a symbol of deception or testing. It was simply part of the rhythm of life he had chosen. Beside him, Jasmine moved with effortless grace, helping Ellie arrange flowers in a vase, her laughter filling the room like a soft melody. Victoria, having quietly accepted her exclusion, had left the mansion, her presence replaced by the calm certainty that Alexander had found love where it truly mattered. Her charm and ambition, once dazzling, now seemed hollow against the depth and constancy of Jasmine's devotion. Alexander looked at Jasmine, his heart swelling with recognition of what had always been clear in actions, if not words. Her love had never required proof or performance. It had been patient, steady, and unwavering through every test, every trial, and every challenge. He reached out, grasping her hand, and she met his gaze with warmth and understanding, a silent promise passing between them. Ellie clapped her hands, giggling, and whispered, "See, Alexander? I told you she was the one." Alexander smiled, feeling a joy he had long denied himself. The mansion, once a stage of pretense and tension, had transformed into a home built on trust, laughter, and authentic love. The final moments were simple yet profound. Shared tea by the fire, quiet conversation, and the knowledge that hearts aligned through honesty and devotion could withstand any obstacle. Alexander had found what wealth and status could never buy, a love that was real, selfless, and enduring. The breakthrough was complete, and a new chapter of happiness, trust, and genuine connection began, unshakable and true. My beautiful family, true love isn't measured by grand gestures, wealth, or appearances. It's shown in patience, selflessness, and consistent care, especially during life's hardest moments. Genuine devotion reveals itself quietly, without expectation, and often in the small acts we overlook. If you were in Alexander's shoes, would you have been able to see through appearances and recognize who truly loved you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you would do.
Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this one, then you'll absolutely love the next. It's even crazier and more captivating than you can imagine. So go ahead and click the video showing right here on your screen, and I'll see you in the next story.